we're hearing a lot in the news this morning about pupils in the North East taking dangerous weapons into schools. They've been confiscated by police, which is exactly what you would want to happen. But in some circumstances, the right and wrongs are not so very clear-cut.
BBC Newcastle has been contacted by a representative of the Sikh community in the North East about a 14-year-old Sikh boy who'd been refused permission to wear a Kirpan in his school on Tyneside. For those of you who don't know what a Kirpan is, it's a dagger or sword which in the Sikh faith represents God.
Well, our reporter Nikki Hornby has been looking into this story for us.
This issue came up when a member of the school staff noticed something glinting under the blazer of the boy in question. Now, we can't identify the pupil or the school because the family don't want to talk to the media, but the head teacher of the school told us that when they spoke to the boy, they found that the kirpan or sword he was wearing was quite a large one. The young man has recently gone through a religious initiation ceremony, like a baptism, according to Cloud Singh from the Gurdwara, the place of worship for Sikhs in the centre of Newcastle. Cloud Singh is a spokesman for the Sikh community in Newcastle, and he's been liaising with the school on behalf of the family.
He went through the initiation ceremony and he went to school in his new appearance. The addition to what he was wearing before that was just the 5Ks. It was just 5 objects that we carry with us at all times. Wooden comb, steel wristlet, a particular type of underwear, all of his hair, we don't take the hair off our bodies, and a small kirpan. And the school said, we need some time to have a good quality think about that, please.
The school have been in discussion with the pupil, his family and the wider Sikh community to find a compromise. They sent us this statement.
We are a multi-faith school with an ethos of inclusion. Within this, the health and safety of all our students and staff is paramount. Currently, after much consideration, a student has been allowed to have a small, specific kirpan, which is blunt and fully sheathed within the school. This has been sewn into ceremonial cloth and sewn into their uniform, so it's not easily accessible. This item of clothing is removed for physical education and locked in a specifically bought locker for this purpose. A full risk assessment regarding the Kirpan has been completed and is continually reviewed.
But Cloud Singh from the Newcastle Sikh community says this isn't really acceptable.
It is an outward sign of the manifestation of faith. And if someone asks you to put your faith away and deny it and to hide it, that in itself is offensive, surely. We live in a multicultural, connected society, do we not? And if the law says it's okay, it's okay. And there are measures and laws in place that say that's okay. And to ask somebody to deny themselves is not right.
The school says it had to carry out a risk assessment, and given today's story about offensive weapons being confiscated in schools, I asked Cloud Singh if he understood the difficulty the school had in allowing the original kirpan to be brought into the school.
I would suggest if you go back through your memory of all those occurrences that have happened in school to do with blades and cutting, knives have been brought into the school, or it's been just outside the school premises. There has never been a situation in England where a kirpan has been used in an offensive way. Never. If you're going to risk assess, and risk assess is necessary if you're going to call a safety count, then you have to take all of those things into account as well.
Currently, the family has agreed to the conditions imposed by the school, and the student is now attending.
And that was Nikki Hornby reporting there. Well, let's talk now to Dabinderjit Singh, OBE of the Sikh Federation, who's been involved in cases like this for 20 years. Thanks for joining us this morning. First of all, can you clarify what the Kirpan is for a Sikh, just for those who don't know?
Basically, if you're an initiated Sikh, and about 1 in 10 Sikhs roughly are initiated, then you have to have a very strict way of life, code of conduct, which involves getting up in the morning, doing an hour of prayers, half an hour of prayers in the evening, being a strict vegetarian, not having any intoxicants. So it's a whole way of life that individual Sikhs, irrespective of their age, irrespective of their gender, they make that decision, like this 14-year-old did in April this year.
Okay, so on a practical level then, because the issue that we're talking about is this dagger or sword, so what would it be used for?
Basically, the kirpan, as used here in the UK, is often used for ceremonial purposes, to bless food, And therefore, some Sikhs will go as far as say if there's any restrictions placed on their Kirpan, they will refuse to eat while that restriction is in place. Now, clearly, you don't want that to happen to this 14-year-old boy, because after all, he's only a child. But I think one of the things that's very clear is the law of this country actually says a Kirpan, which is the Sikh ceremonial sword, is not an offensive weapon. So that's the very first thing. And secondly, every school does have that challenge of, trying to balance health and safety on the one hand, which is crucially important to all children and parents, but at the same time, Sikhs and the wearing of the Kirpan, according to the Department for Education, schools need to be very careful because actually Sikhs are protected as a race under the Equalities Act 2010. And there have been cases, unfortunately, that have ended up in the House of Lords and in the High Court. And in every single case, Sikhs have won on the basis of schools have been found to be racist under the existing laws.
Is it racist, though? Because it could be used as a weapon.
It could, but don't forget two elements of the law. One is it's not an offensive weapon under the law. If it's used offensively, or if it's drawn and used to attack or threaten someone, it ceases to be a defence under the law. But whilst you're wearing it as an article of faith, it is not a weapon. And secondly, because Sikhs are protected under race laws, that's why I was very careful to use the word racial discrimination as opposed to religious discrimination.
And the schools agree for the pupil to wear a small, blunt metal Kirpan that's sewn into his uniform. Is that a good compromise?
I think wearing a smaller Kirpan is clearly up to the individual Sikh and the family, and I understand that. And being blunt, but when it's sewn into your, say, clothes, it goes too far because it then sort of almost ceases, So basically, if it's unusable, because if it's sewn into your clothes, then that Sikh who's initiated has had one of his articles of faith effectively restricted. And you talked in your piece, Nikki talked about how if that child partakes in physical education, it actually has to be removed altogether. And other schools around the country have come up with different compromises which do not impose this level of restriction.
Dabinderjit Singh, thank you very much for joining us this morning from the Sikh Federation.